The mountain storm raged without mercy. Snow fell in heavy sheets covering every path and sealing every trail with white silence. Deep inside a dark cave, an alien mother pressed her thin body against the freezing stone wall, trying to shield her child. Her skin, pale and marked with faint glowing lines, shivered as the cold cut through her bones. She wrapped her arms tightly around the child, but her strength was failing. The child's breath came in short gasps. His small chest rose weakly, his lips trembling as he whispered for food. There was none left. Days had passed since they had eaten anything more than scraps of frozen roots buried beneath the snow. The mother had given her last piece to him, starving herself so he could live. Now even her voice shook when she spoke. "Stay awake," she whispered, her alien tongue soft and broken. Her child's large eyes stared at her, wide and frightened. In the stillness of the cave, the faint cry echoed, a sound too weak to be heard by the storm outside, yet strong enough to pierce her heart. The wind screamed through cracks in the stone, howling like beasts circling in the night. She knew predators roamed these mountains. The scent of weakness, of fear, always brought them closer. She pulled the child tighter to her chest, her claw-like fingers trembling as she stroked his thin hair. Her heart pounded. Survival felt like a dream slipping away. The mother closed her eyes for a moment. Images of their home flashed before her mind, a warm village far below the valley, laughter echoing through their hall, her mate's strong arms carrying wood for the fire. All of it gone. The war had swept across their land, and in the chaos, she had fled with her child. Her mate never returned. She had walked day and night, carrying the boy, searching for safety. Now here they were, trapped by ice and hunger. Her child whimpered again, his small voice cutting through her thoughts. She opened her eyes, biting back her tears. She could not show weakness. She had to believe there was still hope, even if it was fading. She pressed her forehead against his. "Sleep, my little star," she whispered. "I will keep you safe." But safety was a fragile promise. The cave was dark, the air colder with every passing hour. Her body shook violently, her stomach empty, her vision blurring. She tried to gather snow in her hands and melt it for water, but her hands were numb. Drops fell uselessly from her trembling fingers. The boy coughed, a small sound that stabbed her heart like a blade. She rocked him gently, humming a lullaby in her strange voice, though her throat was raw. The sound echoed through the cave like a lonely song lost in stone. Each note carried fear and love, despair and strength. Then, suddenly, she froze. Over the roar of the storm, there was something else. A sound faint, but distinct. Crunching, snow. Heavy footsteps moving closer to the cave entrance. Her heart leapt into her throat. She pulled her child behind her, pressing him against the stone wall. Her body formed a shield, though she was weak and starving. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark as she stared at the mouth of the cave. The sound grew louder. Whoever, or whatever it was, they were coming closer. Her mind raced. Could it be a beast hunting them? Could it be soldiers searching for survivors? She had heard tales of humans, those strange beings from another world who walked these lands now. Some said they were cruel hunters. Others said they were saviors. She had never seen one. She did not know what to believe. Snow crunched louder, echoing into the cave. The mother's breath came fast. She held a sharp stone in her hand, the only weapon she had. Her arms shook not only from weakness but from fear. Her child clung to her, his eyes wide and glistening. The fire of survival burned inside her chest. If it was a beast, she would fight. If it was a soldier, she would not beg. She would defend her son with her last breath. Then the storm shifted, and a dim glow spilled into the cave. A lantern's flickering light broke through the darkness. The footsteps entered. A tall figure stood at the entrance, snow swirling around him. A human. His face was hidden beneath a frost-covered hood. His breath misted in the freezing air as he looked into the cave. The glow of the lantern revealed his features slowly. Eyes sharp, skin hardened by cold, hands gripping supplies. The alien mother's heart thundered in her chest. She gripped the stone tighter, raising it with trembling arms. Her child whimpered behind her, too weak to move. The human paused. His eyes fell on them, on the mother's desperate stance, on the small boy shaking behind her. For a moment, silence filled the cave, heavy and tense. The human raised one hand, slowly, carefully. He did not reach for a weapon. Instead, he knelt down, setting the lantern gently on the ground. From his pack, he pulled something small and wrapped. The smell reached her nose instantly. Food. The child stirred, his gaze locked on it. Hunger made his small body tremble. The mother's throat tightened. She wanted to scream, to push the stranger away, but the scent was too strong, the hope too sharp. The human placed the food on the ground, not moving closer. His eyes stayed calm, steady, almost gentle. The mother trembled between fear and need. The cave, once filled only with despair, now held something new. Suspense wrapped the air tight. Was this stranger salvation, or was it the beginning of a new danger? The child cried softly, reaching forward with frail hands. The mother's breath shook as she whispered, "Stay back." But her voice broke, filled with hunger and doubt. The human waited, his lantern glowing in the dark. The storm howled outside, but inside the cave the world had shrunk to one choice: trust or die. The cave was silent except for the crackle of the human's lantern and the storm's distant howl. The alien mother kept her stone raised, her body shaking, torn between fear and desperation. Her child's weak eyes followed the food resting on the ground, the smell wrapping around him like a lifeline. The human stayed low, showing no threat. He kept his hands open, letting the mother see that he carried no weapon in reach. His eyes, sharp, but strangely gentle, never left hers. He seemed to understand her fear. Slowly, he slid the pack from his shoulder and set it beside him. The mother narrowed her glowing eyes, her breathing heavy. She did not trust easily. Her people had suffered. Enough. Yet, in that flickering light, the human's calm presence stirred something deep inside her, a question she did not want to answer. Could this stranger truly mean no harm? Her child whimpered again. The sound cut her heart in two. The boy leaned forward, stretching a frail hand toward the food, his hunger stronger than his fear. The mother pulled him back quickly, whispering harshly in her own tongue. The boy looked at her with wide, tear-filled eyes, confused and desperate. The human tilted his head, his expression softening. From his pocket, he took out another piece of food, smaller, less threatening, and placed it closer to them, pushing it across the stone floor. He moved slowly like a man who had earned the trust of wild animals before. His voice finally broke the silence. "You are safe," he said quietly. His words carried warmth, though the mother did not understand the language. Still, something in his tone felt different. Not commanding, not cruel, gentle. The mother tightened her grip on the stone. She did not know his words, but she read his eyes. They did not burn with hunger or bloodlust. They carried a strange light, concern. For a long moment, time seemed frozen. The storm outside raged, but inside, the three of them were caught in an invisible test of trust. The child made the choice first. His tiny hand slipped from his mother's grip, reaching forward again. His small fingers touched the food. He clutched it, pulled it close, and began to eat in quick, desperate bites. The mother's throat tightened. She wanted to stop him, but she could not. Tears stung her eyes as she watched her son chew with trembling joy. She turned back to the human, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. The stone in her hand felt useless now, but she still kept it raised. The human did not move closer. Instead, he opened his pack again. From inside, he pulled dried meat, a small flask of water, and a blanket. He set them down one by one. Then carefully he reached into his coat and produced something else, flint and steel. He struck them together, sending sparks into a small pile of kindling he carried in a pouch. A tiny flame came to life, glowing warm against the cave's stone floor. He fed it with dry wood until the fire grew strong, chasing away the freezing cold. The alien mother's eyes widened. She had no fire left, no tools to make one. Watching the flames grow was like watching life return to the cave. Heat spread through the air, thawing her frozen fingers and sending a wave of relief into her weary body. Her child crawled closer, to the fire, holding the food tight in his little hands. He turned his wide eyes toward the human, no longer afraid. His body relaxed, his breathing steadier. The mother's arms fell to her sides. The stone slipped from her fingers, landing softly on the cave floor. Her strength was gone, her defenses melting as the firelight wrapped around them. For the first time in days, warmth touched her skin. She sat down slowly, pulling her child back against her lap. Her eyes stayed on the human, filled with suspicion and wonder. He said nothing more, only fed the fire and let silence do the work. The boy, his hunger eased, leaned against his mother's chest, still clutching the food. His eyes fluttered shut, exhaustion taking him at last. The mother stroked his hair, her sharp claws soft against his scalp. She watched the human carefully, her mind torn between old fear and new hope. The storm outside roared louder, snow slamming against the stone walls. But inside the cave, the fire glowed, 3 lives bound together by one fragile thread of trust. The mother whispered in her language, her voice soft and broken. "Why are you here, human? Why help us?" She knew he could not understand, yet her words escaped anyway, carried by exhaustion and fear. The human glanced at her, his face unreadable in the shadows. He simply nodded once, then placed another piece of food beside the fire, pushing it closer to her. The mother stared at it, her stomach twisting with hunger. She hesitated, her pride fighting against her need. Slowly, she reached forward with trembling hands, took it, and held it close. For the first time since the storm began, she allowed herself to breathe, yet in the back of her mind questions clawed at her. Who was this human? Why did he appear here in this cursed storm? Was he truly a savior, or was he something else? Something waiting for the right moment to reveal his purpose. The fire burned brighter, shadows dancing on the walls. Suspense lingered heavy in the cave. Their fate had shifted, but the future was still uncertain. The fire crackled softly, its glow painting the walls of the cave with dancing shadows. For the alien mother, the sound was almost unfamiliar. She had not heard fire in many nights, not since their desperate escape from the valley. The warmth kissed her frozen skin, thawing the ache in her bones. She watched it carefully, as if afraid it might vanish and leave them in the cold once again. Her child sat close, his small hands holding the food the human had given. His eyes were wide as he chewed slowly, savoring every bite. For the boy, this meal was more than food. It was hope. His chest rose a little stronger now, his cough softer. The faint glow of life returned to his cheeks. The mother's eyes softened at the sight, but her guard never lowered. She shifted slightly, her glowing pupils fixed on the human. He sat across the fire, silent, sharpening a stick with a small knife. His movements were slow and practiced. He looked like a man who had spent many winters in these mountains. Her claws tightened around the piece of dried food he had pushed toward her. Hunger tore at her insides, urging her to eat. But pride, fear, and suspicion battled against it. Her people had always been told humans were dangerous, beings who came from the sky, cold and ruthless. Yet here sat one, feeding her child, making fire for them both. She hesitated, then finally brought the food to her lips. The taste was simple, salty and tough, but to her it felt like a feast. Her body shivered as warmth spread from her stomach. Her eyes watered not from pain but from relief. Still, she ate carefully, never taking her gaze off the man. The human noticed. He met her eyes for only a moment, then returned to his work. He skewered pieces of dried meat onto the stick and held them over the fire. Soon the air filled with a stronger smell, rich, smoky, mouth-watering. The child's nose twitched. his small fingers clinging to his mother's arm as he stared at the roasting food. The mother whispered softly in her own tongue, "Patience, little star." But her own mouth watered, and her hands trembled. The human slowly turned the stick, making sure the meat cooked evenly. When it was ready, he broke a piece off and set it near them. Again, he did not force it into their hands. He simply placed it close, waiting. The child leaned forward eagerly, but the mother stopped him with a gentle touch. She looked at the human carefully, searching his face. Why was he doing this? Why risk his supplies for strangers? For an alien child who meant nothing to him? The human gave no answer, only a small nod toward the food. His eyes were calm, almost kind. Finally, she allowed her son to take it. The boy bit into the warm meat, his eyes closing as he chewed. He let out a tiny sigh of happiness, a sound the mother had not heard in weeks. She watched him, her heart swelling with relief and sorrow all at once. The human broke another piece and placed it closer to her. This time she did not hesitate. She reached out, her claws brushing the edge of the stone floor, and took it. The warmth of the food filled her again, strength trickling back into her weary body. For a moment, silence settled over the cave. The storm still howled outside, but inside there was peace, fragile, uncertain, but real. The firelight danced, on their faces binding 3 lives in a quiet circle. The child finished eating and curled up against his mother's lap, his small body finally able to rest. His breathing grew steady, his tiny hand still clutching crumbs as if afraid they might vanish. The mother stroked his hair gently, her glowing eyes softening. She turned her gaze back to the human. Her voice was low, filled with suspicion but also gratitude. "Why?" she whispered, though she knew he would not understand her language. "Why help us?" The human looked at her, his expression unreadable. He took a sip from his flask, then placed it near the fire, sliding it toward her. Water sloshed inside. The mother hesitated, then picked it up. The taste was clean, cold, and pure. She drank deeply, her throat burning with relief. When she finished, she held the flask tightly, staring at the human in silence. He did not speak. He only sat back, watching the flames. For the first time, the mother allowed her shoulders to relax. She was still afraid, still uncertain, but something inside her shifted. This human had shown no violence, only care. Perhaps, she thought, not all humans were enemies. But deep in her chest, fear lingered. Trust was dangerous. Trust could destroy her. And yet, as her child slept peacefully for the first time in many nights, she could not deny what she felt. In the cave's warmth, with firelight reflecting in her eyes, the alien mother realized she was no longer completely alone. A stranger had shared his food, his fire, his silence. It was not safety, not yet, but it was something she had not known for a long time. Hope. The fire burned steady, its glow pushing back the darkness of the cave. The alien mother sat close to her child, who slept peacefully for the first time in many nights. The human sat across the flames, silent, sharpening a short blade against stone. His every movement was calm, steady, practiced. The mother wanted to rest, but her ears caught something outside, a sound carried on the wind, faint but real. She stiffened, her eyes narrowing as she turned toward the mouth of the cave. The storm was quieter now, yet the snow still fell heavy, muffling every echo. Beneath that silence, another noise stirred. Low, growls, soft crunches of paws pressing through the snow. Her heart pounded. She had heard that sound before. Beasts of the mountains, hunters that tracked the weak and smelled blood in the snow. She pulled her child tighter into her lap, her claws pressing against his thin body. He stirred slightly but did not wake. The human stopped sharpening his blade, his head tilted toward the sound, his eyes narrowing. He moved without panic, but with precision. Slowly he set the knife down and reached for his weapon, a short spear strapped to his pack. His eyes met hers, sharp and alert. No words were exchanged, but she understood. Danger was near. The cave air grew heavier. The firelight flickered, throwing long shadows across the walls. Outside, the growls grew louder. The crunch of snow became quicker, closer. More than one beast. They were circling, drawn by the scent of roasted meat and smoke. The mother swallowed hard, her body tense. Her instincts screamed to flee, but the storm outside was unforgiving. Leaving the cave meant certain death. They had no choice but to face what was coming. The human lifted a hand, signaling her to stay quiet. He lowered himself close to the fire, his spear ready. His eyes burned with focus. The mother shifted her child gently against the wall, covering him with the thin blanket the human had given. Then she reached for a jagged rock near her side. It was crude, but it was all she had. A low snarl broke the silence. From the mouth of the cave, two glowing eyes appeared in the darkness, then another pair, then more. The storm's white curtain parted, revealing hulking shapes in the snow. Their fur was thick, their bodies large, their jaws dripping with saliva as they sniffed the air hungrily. Snow beasts, pack hunters. The child whimpered softly in his sleep. The mother pressed her hand gently over his head, praying he would not wake. The beast stepped closer, their paws crunching softly against the frozen ground. The human rose slowly, spear steady in his grip. His stance was firm, his shadow tall against the firelight. The first beast stepped inside the cave. Its yellow eyes glared at the fire, its fangs glistening. A deep growl rumbled through its chest. Another beast followed, circling wide, its eyes fixed on the mother and child. The human did not wait. With a sudden cry, he lunged forward, driving his spear into the air between them. The sound of wood striking stone echoed loud, startling the beasts. They snarled, baring their teeth. The human stood tall, his presence challenging, unyielding. The beasts hesitated, pacing, testing their prey. They were hungry but cautious. The firelight unsettled them, but the scent of food kept them near. One beast stepped closer, its claws scraping the stone floor. The human gripped his spear tighter, his muscles coiled to strike. The mother's chest heaved with fear. She knew he could not fight them all alone. Her claws tightened around the sharp rock in her hand. She was weak, but she would not let them reach her child. The first beast lunged. The human moved like lightning, thrusting his spear forward. The tip sliced across the beast's face, drawing a snarl of pain. The creature staggered back, shaking. Its head. The others roared louder, their fury growing. The cave erupted into chaos. The fire hissed as snow scattered across the flames. Shadows leapt across the walls, wild and frantic. The beast lunged again, circling from both sides. The human fought with precision, striking, pushing, forcing them back. Each movement was sharp, efficient, yet there were too many. One slipped past him, charging straight toward the alien mother and her child. Her blood ran cold. Her son stirred, his eyes opening in terror as the beast's massive form bore down on them. Without thinking, she leapt forward, raising the stone high. Her claws slashed down, striking the beast's snout. The creature roared in rage, its hot breath washing over her. The human spun at the sound, his spear cutting through the air. He slammed the weapon into the beast's side, forcing it back. Together they drove it away, their bodies moving with desperate unity. The cave filled with the clash of survival, snarls, cries, the crackle of fire, the pounding of hearts. The mother's arms trembled, her body weak but her spirit fierce. The human's strikes were swift and unrelenting, each one fueled by experience and determination. At last, one beast collapsed, blood staining the snow. The others, growling, in frustration, circled once more. Their yellow eyes burned in the dark, but the pack had tasted pain, and pain taught fear. Slowly, they retreated, slipping back into the storm. Their growls faded, swallowed by the wind. Silence returned, heavy and trembling. The fire still burned, though weaker now. The human stood over the fallen beast, chest rising and falling with steady breaths. His spear dripped with blood. The mother dropped the stone from her hand. Her claws shook, her arms aching. She stumbled back to her child, pulling him close. His small body trembled, but he clung to her, eyes wide with fear and relief. The human's eyes met hers across the fire. They said nothing, yet the silence spoke louder than words. In the shadows of the cave, enemies had fought side by side, bound not by trust but by survival, and for the first time she realized without him they would both be dead. The silence did not last. The storm outside howled again, and through the icy wind came the echoes of growls. The beasts were not gone. They had only retreated to gather strength, circling in the snow, waiting for another chance. The human knew it. His spear was still wet with blood, and his eyes never left the cave mouth. He adjusted his grip, planting his boots firm on the stone. Across the fire, the alien mother clutched her child close, her glowing eyes fixed on the entrance. Her body shook with exhaustion, but she would not run. Not now. The child whimpered softly, burying his face into her chest. She whispered in her tongue, "Stay strong, little star. Do not fear." But her own heart thundered like a drum. A shadow passed over the entrance. Then another. The beasts returned. Their yellow eyes glowed like lanterns in the storm. They moved low, their bodies tense, their snarls echoing against the stone walls. This time there were more. The pack had gathered. The human did not hesitate. He crouched low, firelight glinting on the blade of his spear. The mother grabbed her stone, again though her hands trembled. Together they prepared. The first beast lunged into the cave, roaring. Its massive body leapt straight toward the human. He stepped sideways, thrusting his spear upward. The tip pierced its shoulder, sending it crashing to the ground with a howl. But another beast darted around him, charging straight for the mother and child. The mother's breath caught. Her child screamed. With a desperate cry, she swung her stone, striking the beast's face. The blow was weak, but it slowed the creature. She pushed her child behind her, raising her claws. The beast snapped its jaws inches from her face. Before it could strike again, the human was there. He drove his spear into its side, twisting hard. The beast roared in agony, collapsing against the stone floor. Blood sprayed, hissing as it touched the fire. But there was no time to rest. Two more beasts entered, snarling, their eyes wild with hunger. The human pulled his spear free and stood ready, chest heaving. His breath misted in the cold, his eyes burning with determination. The mother rose to her knees, clutching her rock, tighter. Her arms were weak, but her spirit was fierce. She would not let them take her child, not while she still breathed. The beasts circled, snapping their jaws, testing their prey. The fire flickered, shadows leaping wildly across the walls. The human shifted his stance, waiting for the right moment. The mother crouched low, her child clinging to her leg. Then they attacked. The first beast lunged at the human. He met it with a powerful strike, his spear driving deep into its chest. The second beast slipped past him, rushing for the mother. She screamed, swinging her stone with all her strength. The rock struck its nose, but the beast pushed forward, claws scraping the ground. In that instant, instinct took over. She dropped the stone and grabbed a jagged shard of bone from the cave floor. With a furious cry, she stabbed it into the beast's throat. Hot blood spilled over her hands. The creature thrashed, then collapsed, its weight shaking the ground. The child cried out, clinging to her tightly. She pulled him close, her body trembling from fear and adrenaline. Her glowing eyes locked onto the human. He was still standing, chest heaving, his spear dripping with blood. But the danger was not over. More shapes moved in the storm outside. The pack was large, hungry, relentless. The human glanced at the mother, then at the child. For a moment, their eyes met across the fire. No words were spoken, but the message was clear. If they were to survive, they had to fight together. The mother nodded slowly, clutching the bone shard tight. Her body was weak, but her heart was strong. The human gripped his spear, planting his feet firm. The next wave of beasts rushed in, snarls filling the cave. The human struck. The mother defended, their movements desperate but united. Blood sprayed, claws tore, fire hissed. The cave became A battlefield. The child cried softly in the corner, but his eyes shone with awe as he watched his mother and the human fight side by side. The two who should have been enemies now stood as one. At last, after what felt like hours, the final beast fell. Its body collapsed near the fire, smoke rising from its blood. The cave was silent again, except for the crackle of flames and the sound of heavy breathing. The human leaned on his spear, chest heaving, sweat and frost on his brow. The mother dropped the bone shard, her hands covered in blood, her arms shaking. She fell to her knees beside her child, pulling him into her arms. The boy buried his face into her chest, his small body trembling. She held him tight, her heart pounding, tears spilling from her eyes. She looked across the fire at the human. He was watching her, his face unreadable, but his eyes carried something she had never seen before: respect. In that moment, the alien mother knew the truth. Alone they would have died. Together, they had survived. The cave, once filled with fear and hunger, was now filled with silence, blood, and fire. The battle was won, but the war for survival was far from over. The storm outside howled like a wounded beast, but inside the cave silence hung heavy. The bodies of the snow creatures lay scattered, their dark blood staining the frozen stone. Smoke rose from the fire, carrying the bitter scent of battle. The alien mother knelt on the floor, her child wrapped tightly in her arms. Her body trembled, her claws stained red. She pressed her face into her child's hair, whispering softly in her own tongue. "You are safe now, little star. Safe." Yet even as she spoke, her voice shook. The danger was gone, but fear still clung to her chest. The human stood across the fire, spear planted in the ground, his shoulders heaving with every breath. His eyes scanned the cave mouth one last time, making sure no beast remained. Then, slowly he lowered himself to the ground. His hands were bloodied, his coat torn, but his eyes burned steady. For a long moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled between them, casting shifting shadows across their weary faces. Two survivors, strangers from different worlds, bound now by a single truth. They had fought together, and they had lived. The mother's arms ached. She noticed a deep cut running along her forearm, blood dripping steadily onto the stone. Her strength faltered, but she ignored it, focusing on the child who clung to her chest. His small body shivered, though not from cold. He had seen too much. His wide eyes darted toward the beast's corpses, and he buried his face deeper into her arms. The human's gaze shifted. He noticed the blood on her arm. Without a word, he reached into his pack and pulled out a strip of fabric torn from an old shirt. Slowly, carefully, he moved closer. His footsteps echoed softly in the cave. The mother tensed. Her claws curled, her body leaning protectively over her child. Her eyes glowed faintly in warning. But the human stopped just short of, the fire holding the fabric out in plain sight. His face showed no anger, no demand, only quiet offering. Her breathing quickened. She wanted to refuse. She wanted to tell him she did not need his help. But the blood dripped faster now, her arm growing weaker. Her child raised his head, his innocent eyes shifting between her and the human. In that gaze, she saw a question. Why fight the one who had saved them? The human waited patiently. Finally, the mother extended her arm, her movement stiff and uncertain. The human crossed the fire slowly, kneeling before her. His hands were rough but steady as he wrapped the cloth around her wound. She flinched at the touch, but did not pull away. When he tied the fabric tight, the bleeding slowed. The warmth of the fire reached her skin, mixing with the warmth of his careful gesture. She stared at him, her breath caught between mistrust and gratitude. He met her gaze briefly, then stepped back without a word. Her child reached for the human's sleeve, his tiny fingers brushing the worn fabric. The boy's wide eyes blinked up at him, no longer filled with fear. For the first time, the human's stern face softened. He gave the boy a small nod before returning to his place by the fire. The mother exhaled slowly, pulling her child close once more. Her heart was torn in two. Part of her still screamed to distrust him, to remember the warnings of her people. Yet another part whispered that without him they would already be dead. As the flames crackled, the human shared more of his supplies. He placed food on the stone between them, pushing it closer. The mother hesitated but accepted, breaking it into small pieces for her child. The boy ate quietly, his eyes darting back to the human again and again, as if drawn by something new. Trust. Hours passed. The storm outside raged on, but the cave grew warmer. The human rested with his back against the wall, his spear within reach. His eyes closed briefly, though his hand never left the weapon. The mother sat opposite, her child asleep in her lap, his small breath soft and steady. She stared at the fire, her thoughts heavy. Her people had taught her to fear humans. They were invaders, strangers, destroyers. But this one had bled for them, fought beside her, saved her son. She looked at him again, his face half hidden by shadow. Who was he truly? The fire popped, sending sparks into the air. The mother's eyes lingered on him, and for the first time in many nights her heart felt something she thought she had lost. Not safety, not yet, but a fragile bond, fragile as glass, born from survival. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "Maybe. Not all humans are enemies." The words faded into the crackle of fire. The human stirred, his eyes opening briefly. He did not understand her tongue, but something in her voice made him glance at her. Their eyes met, and in that quiet moment, no language was needed. The storm outside screamed, but inside the cave, two worlds had taken a step closer. The storm began to fade with the slow passing of night. The howling wind grew weaker, the snow lighter. Inside the cave, the fire burned low, its glow soft and steady. The alien mother stirred awake, her child still curled in her arms. His tiny chest rose and fell peacefully, his lips no longer pale but touched with life. She brushed his hair back gently, her claws careful not to scratch his fragile skin. Relief warmed her heart. For the first time in many nights, he was sleeping, without hunger gnawing at him. For the first time, she believed he might live. Across the fire, the human sat awake, his back against the cave wall. His eyes were tired, but sharp, always alert. His spear rested beside him, ready if danger returned. The glow of the embers lit his face, and for the mother he looked less like a stranger now, less like an enemy, more like a guardian. She sat quietly, watching him. The silence between them was no longer heavy with fear. It was calm, cautious, but filled with something new: respect. She touched her bandaged arm, feeling the fabric he had tied there. The wound still ached, but the bleeding had stopped. His hands had saved her. When the child finally stirred, he blinked at the firelight, then at the human. His small lips curved into a faint smile. The mother felt her throat tighten. Her son had suffered so much, yet in this moment he looked safe. Safe because of the one who should have been their enemy. The human noticed the boy's gaze. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small piece of dried fruit. Slowly he placed it on the ground and slid it toward them. The child reached eagerly, clutching it with both hands before nibbling happily. His laughter, weak but real, echoed softly. In the cave, the mother's heart softened. That sound, so small and fragile, was more powerful than any weapon. She whispered in her tongue, "You have given him back his smile." The human tilted his head, not understanding the words, but the tone was clear. He gave a short nod, then turned toward the cave mouth. Outside, the storm had ended. Pale light spread across the horizon, breaking through the mist. Snow still covered the mountains, but the air carried the promise of dawn. The human stood, adjusting his pack. He walked to the entrance, scanning the valley below. The land stretched wide, white and silent, with no beasts in sight. He turned back toward her, motioning with his hand. A simple gesture. "Come." The mother hesitated. This cave had been shelter, but not safety. The dead beasts, the lingering cold, the hunger. It was not a place to stay. Yet stepping into the open with him meant something greater. Trust. Her child clung to her, his small eyes curious. She looked at him, then at the human. Slowly she rose to her feet. Her legs shook with weakness, but her spirit was firm. She lifted her child into her arms and followed. At the mouth of the cave, the first rays of morning fell across her face. The snow sparkled like crystals, untouched and endless. The air was sharp, but it carried hope instead of despair. She took a deep breath, letting it fill her lungs. The human stepped ahead, his boots crunching in the snow. He carried his spear in one hand and steadied the child's blanket with the other. He moved with purpose, leading them down the path carved by the storm. The mother walked behind, her child pressed against her chest. Each step was heavy, but each step was life. She glanced at the human often, her suspicion still present, but weaker now. He had fought for them, bled for them, fed them. She could not deny it. Without him, they would never see this dawn. As they descended the mountain path, the child lifted his head and whispered faintly in his own language, "He saved us." The mother's eyes filled with tears. She kissed, his forehead whispering back, "Yes, little star, he saved us." The valley stretched below, distant forests and rivers glimmering under the morning light. It was a long journey, uncertain and dangerous, but no longer impossible. Not with him by their side. The human paused, turning back toward them. His eyes met hers. No words passed, but the meaning was clear. They were not enemies anymore. They were survivors, partners in struggle, perhaps more. The mother nodded once, her eyes glowing softly in the rising sun. For the first time since her world had fallen apart, she felt the weight of despair lift. The storm had tried to take everything from her, but in its heart she had found something unexpected. A human who chose not to destroy but to protect. A bond born in blood, fire, and hunger, fragile but unbreakable. Together they stepped into the light of dawn, and in that frozen valley, hope was reborn.